We're doing a solo episode today, and I was trying to think of the things that I wanted to pop on and talk about. And one thing that has really stuck with me this week is the concept that it's only delusional until it works. Every breakthrough in history has had one thing in common, and that's that people called it ridiculous. So, this is inventing the airplane, running a 4-minute mile, you know, quitting your stable job to try something new. All of these things sound irrational to others until somebody proved that they weren't. And it started getting me thinking, how many dreams die because people are more afraid of looking delusional than failing? And there are two kinds of people. You have people who need permission before they're able to believe in themselves, or you have people that believe in themselves first and they just let everybody else catch up. And this is one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves. We think that people admire us being confident, but they don't. They admire successful confidence. But before you're successful, that confidence looks like arrogance. And your optimism is naivete. And this persistence that you have is like an obsessive personality trait. Believing in yourself seems delusional. And it's the success that changes the label on that. And confidence is usually called delusion until there's some sort of receipt. And there's a historical and scientific reason for this. Your brain is trying to save you from embarrassment. But humans have evolved to survive rejection, but that wasn't always the case. Thousands of years ago, if you were excluded from the tribe, so to speak, it could literally kill you. And today, our brain reacts almost the same way to posting an Instagram reel. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between what is public embarrassment and what is genuine danger. And that's why almost everyone quits. And it's not because that dream is impossible, it's because the embarrassment feels fatal. Your comfort zone isn't protecting your dreams, it's protecting your reputation. And this is a mindset that I only partially understand because I do think that I am missing whatever embarrassment gene is out there because I have this quote unquote delusional self confidence that it's got to be somebody, so why not me? And I guess that wasn't always the case. And this started really early. So we talk about this a lot on the podcast, obviously. I was a very offbeat kid. I was the weirdo loser in high school. And I tried out for a reality TV show where two teens switch lives. They go across the country and, trade lives. And the average kid is thinking, I can't do this. I would never do this. What would people at school think? Didn't think about it for 2 seconds, just applied. I think because I always had this dream of I want to do something great. And in order to do something great, you just have to try. So why not? All they can do is say no. And I tell this to my friends all the time who reach out and say, should I do this? What do I do here? I'm like, and maybe it's losing a parent really early. Nothing is really that bad in comparison. I mean, who cares if the guy turns you down? Who cares if you don't get the job? Who cares if someone says no or ignores you or doesn't respond? Who cares? There are just worse things. And the excitement of putting yourself out there, the excitement of waiting to see if you get something, and then that overwhelming sense of personal accomplishment when you do get it. Maybe it's dopamine seeking behavior, but man, I would never let my fear of rejection or my fear of not getting something take away the opportunity for success to actually happen in my life. And I think back in my life, so, obviously I did this reality TV show, but then I got to college and I went out and tried to be in a sorority, not somebody that people, again, from the outside would look at and say, okay, she's going to be in a sorority. No, I did that. Then, tried out for this charitable beauty pageant and ended up winning that. And then went on to try for Miss Maryland USA, try for Miss DC, to then go on to compete at Miss USA and Miss America. And then, I'm a 30 something living abroad in Germany. Sports Illustrated has this casting call. And I just said, why not me? Like, why not throw my hat in the ring? And these things just worked out. And I honestly feel like if you cast the net far enough, if you are constantly putting yourself out there, something's going to happen for you. And there is no better example than in the creator space. It is the people who are posting all the time. It is not necessarily the most exciting, the most beautiful, the most interesting, the funniest. It is the people who show up every single day and continue to put themselves out there. And they are living these dream lives because they just had the courage to keep going and try. And this is such a valuable trait for our entire lives because what you don't want to do is be on your deathbed someday looking back at what you could have accomplished. And that's how you end up with these Uncle Rico, well, I could have won state. I could have thrown the football over the mountain. I could have XYZ. Those people are resentful. They are hateful because they did not have the courage to put themselves out there and try and potentially succeed or potentially fail. So if you want to find contentment, success, um, fulfillment in your life, you just have to get out there and give it a go. And I think about this almost daily. If I had waited for everyone to agree with me or for everyone to believe in me, none of the best parts of my life ever would have happened. And look, I'm not perfect. I am a perfectionist, and I know that perfection is the antithesis of progress. And it's this permission trap that we get stuck in where people are waiting for signs that they're qualified to do something. But here's the irony: nobody gives you permission. You become qualified to do something by doing it. And obviously, we're not talking about brain surgery here. However, most of the things that we want to do in life, you do not need a qualification for it. You do not need the permission of others. You need the permission of yourself and the courage to just get out there and try. Once you get over the hurdle of the first version of something, it feels easier, and it's almost like a muscle that you are training. And so over time, taking those chances feels less intimidating. It feels less scary. So this is the first podcast episode you do, the first public speech you give, the first company you start, the first book that you write. Nobody is good. Everybody is awkward. They're just out there working on that muscle until they get good. And beginners are just experts with embarrassing archives, I promise you. And this is something uncomfortable to talk about. When you put yourself out there and you try new things, most of your friendships will suffer because people secretly want you to succeed, but not before they expected you to. When you believe in yourself, when you are trying new things, when you are putting yourself out there, that growth forces the people in your lives to question their own excuses. That little inside voice starts saying, why not me? And this is where you can tell if you have good friends or not. If that voice says, why not me? Hey, I need to work harder and maybe I can have that too. That's a good friend. But if that little voice in their head starts getting resentful and says, she doesn't deserve that, I do, that's when the friendship falls apart. And the confidence that you have in yourself is inspiring until it becomes inconvenient for other people. So that is why they always say it is lonely at the top, because most people will not come along for the ride because it's like looking in the mirror that they haven't believed in themselves. They don't have the courage to try. In the process, you also have to realize that there is this period, this sort of delusion gap where you believe, but the reality hasn't caught up yet. And this is where most people quit. Not because they were wrong, not because they weren't talented, because there wasn't enough evidence yet, and it's starting to get scary. I'm in the middle of reading Dave Portnoy's book, Cancel Me If You Can, and it is a perfect example of someone who just kept going. If you look at a lot of these businesses, people were operating for years and years and years, not making money. And obviously, this is a privileged place to be in. Not everyone can just work nonstop at something and not reap the financial rewards. But if you are in a position where you can have a side hustle, you can operate on very little income, you can change your lifestyle to keep going, then do it. And I have been one who has quit times. I have been one that has gotten scared, started to think that it wasn't my destiny because it wasn't just hitting right away. But as I've gotten older, I've realized, look, if you have a great idea and you are working at it until there is some glaring sign for you to stop, you just have to keep going and you get past that delusion gap until it finally hits. And I promise you, there will be something that hits. And I heard something once that just hit me like a dagger in the chest. And it was that most dreams don't fail, they expire. And that's because you just do not give yourself enough time to get to the point where you accomplish the goal. You stop believing because it's taking too long. And here's where you actually have to love yourself enough, believe in yourself enough to just keep going and see if it works out. Think it is this fine line between refusing to let the evidence of today become the ceiling for what you do tomorrow. And obviously, there is a delusion in thinking that you are 5 feet tall and you're going to go on to become an NBA star. That is real delusion. However, just because no one's run a 4 minute mile before doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that maybe somebody hasn't worked hard enough to accomplish it. But if you find yourself in the arena, you have to allow yourself enough time and enough failures to potentially get to that big goal. But we also cannot ignore reality. So I think this is a personal decision. It is a personal voice that you have in your own head. There are things that feel impossible, and then there are things that are impossible. And so we need to be able to discern between the two. And to wrap up our mini-sode today, I wanted to leave you with maybe your dream is unrealistic, but maybe it isn't. And there's something that I know for certain, and that it's the version of you that never tried has a 0% chance. But the version that keeps showing up, who knows? And so this week, I want you to do something that feels just embarrassing enough that you've been putting it off, whether that's publishing the video, sending the email, applying for the opportunity, asking the question, starting the business. Because here's what I learned too late. The goal isn't to avoid looking delusional. The goal is to become the kind of person who's willing to look delusional long enough for reality to catch up. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and I am looking forward to sharing the exciting guests that we have for next week. So thanks for believing, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.